colleagues, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I guess on behalf of all of us, I thank you for giving us the opportunity of sharing our views and experiences with relation to capacity building in the profession. We have an hour and a half. I believe we still have an hour and a half. I don't know where our organizers are. Do we have an hour and a half or an hour 15 minutes? An hour 15 minutes or an hour and a half? An hour and a half. An hour and a half. So what we will do is that over the course of an hour, would have views from the distinguished panel. And as you can see, it's a panel that draws from academia, it draws from legal practice, and from those in-house, as also international opinion as to how we develop capacity. As chairman, I've been told to say nothing other than to say that in considering capacity building, we'll be looking not only at what the Nigerian Law School does or what our universities do, but also what law firms do and what people like Dr. Kachiku do in their organizations to increase capacity of lawyers. I think we should be asking the panel to interrogate whether lawyers should see themselves as just those noblemen, or they should see themselves as business people and providers of service that should be subject to the rules of the market. I think we'll interrogate whether we should build capacity in relation to how we brand ourselves, how we see ourselves, and the way society sees us, the role the lawyer should play in society, and what we can do about economic development. I assure you that over the next 1 hour, you would hear a lot about what we can do given where we're going. The Nigerian legal profession has a good amount of people of Generation X and a small amount of digital natives that will become increasingly important as we face challenges thrown up by technology in relation to the profession. That should be all from me, and I think I would ask us to listen first to Professor Ernest Njoku. He has 8 minutes only to speak to you. The panelists will speak for 8 minutes each. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm actually not very sure what I'm asked to speak about. But I can tell you a few things about the current legal education in Nigeria. One, we all know that the LLB program is one of the longest in the world, 5 years. And basically what we do there for 5 years, there are exceptions, there are exceptional teachers, there are a few exceptional programs in the faculties, but generally, what we do there is to assemble a good number of students, more than we can manage in most law faculties, and teach them, or tell them, not teach them, tell them the definitions of offenses, the elements of offense, the principles of offer and acceptance. That's what we do for 5 years. We neither train our students in the university based on any skills or competence principle. We don't even allow them to develop analytical skills because majority of the learning process is done by dictating notes to students. That's what we do. And when the students graduate, they go to the law school and spend about 9 months. At the law school, the curriculum has changed. It has a goal, it has outcomes, it's supposed to be interactive, it's supposed to be skills-based, but we teach them in the stadium. It's a stadium learning exercise. So we end up doing exactly what we have done also in the university. For the LLB program, we do not have any faculty that has developed a goal for legal education. No goal. So you can imagine playing a football between Eyimba and Mighty Jets of Jaws, because I'm not with Arsenal and all that. And we don't have goalposts. That's what we do in the LLB program. We just keep playing until we get tired in the field. At the end, we set an exams and decide who moves on. And in fact, in most cases, everybody must move on. The Nigerian Bar Association is one professional body that have not shown any interest in receiving the people that will join it properly trained for all the years past. I'm not talking about now. There's a legal education committee, which is a permanent committee of the bar. The bar has not for one day sat down to say, what is it that we want our students to be like when they graduate? These people that will join us. I went to University of Ife, Great Ife, and it was one of the best at the time we went there, and I'm sure it's still one of the best today. What we did at Ife was much better than what we did many years later in the schools. But for 4 years at the University of Ife, I did not hear the word client for one day. Not one teacher mentioned the word client. I never had it. So why were we training the law students? No go. I'll move you to how we manage the educators. There's an accreditation body called the National University Commission. When they set out on an accreditation of law faculties, they choose our peers, they exchange peers, the professors from different universities to go to another university generally, with an officer of the NUC as secretary. When we arrive, the assessment is on quantity. And what do we do in the faculties to meet the standard? If you had 5,000 students, you produce a list that will show that you had 500 students. If you had a heavy bottom junior staff, you remove them from the list and give some letters of promotion and place some in the middle. The letters are fake, run from the vice chancellor to the law faculty. So everybody is doing the same thing and they get accreditation. When the Council of Legal Education comes, it uses what I call a general principle. There are some guidelines, but not guidelines. And there's a general statement about your qualification. And everything is by quantity. We have not done anything. We have not even started to begin to think about legal education in the country. People argue with me and say the profession itself does not have accrediting powers or oversight function. And I say yes, they don't. But they can create one. The American Bar Association does not have an oversight function over LLB programs or JD or whatever they call it in US. But if you want to be a law school and you don't have the ABA accreditation, you know nobody will go there. Or very few Nigerians would like to go there anyway. We have no legal education office in the MBA. There's no committee as of today. We have a few people who go to law school for meetings, but there's no guideline for their reporting back to us. What about the continuing legal education program? The bar set up one in 2007, but it does not exist anymore. So people just keep going for one training program or the other. The reporting period had passed many years. So this is just to give you an idea of the background of our training. We will develop the discussion as we progress.
Thank you very much, Professor Ojukwu. I think that sets the stage, and from him we know that I don't know whether there's anybody from the executive of the Bar Association here who would have a lot of questions to answer. I probably would turn on the microphone to Mr. Onodeko, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, for him to answer the query that was set by one of his teachers before, as to what seems to be the inadequacy of teaching by both the law school and Nigerian law faculties.
I think I'm going to start with a conclusion that whilst we may say we don't have any cause to be jumping for joy regarding legal education and indeed education in Nigeria generally, maybe also we should, or we cannot say that all is not good about it. So we need to balance what we have with how we got there. The training in Nigerian universities is for a period of 5 years, consequent upon the change of school system from the 6-5-4 of the past, or 6-5-2-3 of the past, now to 6-3-3-4, which really doesn't seem to be understood by anybody around here. The basis for the 6-3-3-4 has been lost in its implementation, and I agree with Professor Ojukwu that we perhaps have the longest Bachelor of Laws program anywhere in the Commonwealth, or perhaps even in the common law. I don't know why it's 5 years. I spent 3 years in the university post my HSC. I went in as a direct entry candidate, and I spent only 3 years to obtain my degree. Even if you are going to add the one more year that those who did not go through HSC had to go through, it will have been 4. So that's an issue for another day. Now, at the Nigerian Law School, the system there is for bar vocational training. You are supposed to acquire requisite skills to enable you to take off, not to equip you totally to be a superstar practitioner. And I believe everyone in this hall, apart from those who are not Nigerians, must have attended the Nigerian Law School. The truth is that this institution was designed via the Unsworth Committee's report to prepare you to take off in practice. The aim is not to create successful legal practitioners ab initio. Now, there are those who have their talents or are very skillful, and they get into the rhythm much earlier than others. And I will agree, of course, that at the point of employment, after your enrollment as a practitioner, the capacities acquired by the entrants will vary from individual to individual. But as a teacher, I can tell you this. I write references for students, I see transcripts, and I get reports from institutions all over the world, and even from legal practitioners and from other bars. All is not bad about us. We have some very good candidates or practitioners at the point of entry who will excel anywhere in the world. Acquisition of lawyering skills is not taught in an institution for the purpose of you to be a total person. The essence is to introduce you to those skills for you to develop them later in practice. And there are many successful practitioners here today who will attest to that at the point of entry, perhaps they did not even know much about what they wanted to make of themselves. But here they are today, they are successful. We do get criticisms from some quarters about our products. What do we teach at the law school? Of course, those skill-based subjects: criminal litigation, civil litigation, property law practice, corporate law practice, and professional ethics and skills. Now, these are procedural subjects in nature, as opposed to the principles of law subjects taught in universities. And that is why one of the first things we try to tell students at the law school when they enroll is that the approach at this level is different. You are no longer acquiring knowledge for the purpose of mere regurgitation. You are now acquiring knowledge for the purpose of application of the knowledge acquired. And so it's no longer criminal law, where you learn the principles of offenses and what constitutes them. You are now learning how to apply those principles to real-life situations to prove the guilt of a person alleged to have committed an offense. So that's the difference. We also hear about dictation, that they dictate notes. I cannot speak for universities, but I know there are guilty ones, or in quotes, guilty ones in quotes, but then there are also many teachers in universities who teach students to understand. And that is the truth. At the law school, we even have practice books for students in every subject, which practitioners come and buy at the Nigerian law school because they are very useful for practice. Now, I agree that the time constraints at the law school will not enable us to go over many things we would have loved to do. Take, for example, those skills, interviewing skills, research skills, and things like that. There are so many of them. But we introduce students to them and let them know that when you leave, you will need this to succeed in your practice. And let me say this: when people talk about subjects at the law school, for example, that, oh, they don't teach this, they don't teach that. We are not supposed to be teaching principles of law subjects at the law school. And that is why we bring in the profession itself by way of infusion. Now we are going on to what is called classroom solution to be deployed by the Nigerian Communication Satellite, NICOMSAT, for us. That should come on before our resumption in October. The essence of this is to enable all our 6 campuses, including the headquarters in Abuja, to be production zones for inviting and including members of the profession, the bar and the bench in particular, into our teaching curriculum. Now, I have seen a number of practitioners here, learned senior advocates, who are part of unofficial or loose adjunct faculty. They come in, year out, at their own expense to interact with our students for the purpose of instilling in them some of these snippets of lawyering skills for their use in practice. Now, with the classroom solution we are planning to deploy, you will now have any zone, as opposed to having practitioners moving from one campus to another to interact with students. Lagos and Abuja are the best beneficiaries of this, for obvious reasons. Lagos, in fact, is a mega place for it because most practitioners are in Lagos. I have 2 more minutes, sir. Thank you very much. I know you will grant it.
Dr. Kajiku, he's just taking your time.
All right. Now, when this comes on in October, we can invite a practitioner or a judge or a member of the profession in industry to come in on a specific topic of expertise to interact with all the students of the Nigerian Law School in one fell swoop. You can be in Lagos, we have the production center there, and then beam it around, and you will be in a virtual classroom with all the students of Nigerian law school. That will enable us to inject more of the profession into our teaching model. And I think with that, our students will benefit even far more than they are doing now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. So from the director of the law school, we know that it's a matter of balance and that those who criticize the law school should know where it's coming from, and it's come a long way. We hear that the law school tries to ensure that it's a place where it's a matter of application and not regurgitation. But I think it will be nice to hear from someone who has enjoyed this experience recently. I'd like him to tell us whether in the law school, if you are drinking Coke in class, someone would say, put up your Coke, put up your hands and close your eyes. Or whether it is true that in the law school, they are redefining the architecture of legal practice. So I'm going to ask an associate from Templars, Kenneth Okor, to come and let us know what we get from these two gentlemen. Thank you. You have 8 minutes. So he left the law school not too long ago, I'm sure. Not too long ago. You left the law school not too long ago.
Yes, in 2015.
Yes, so I'm sure we're going to hear the real truth now. They can't do anything to you. So he let us know what, this Professor Shokpiton and co, what they do, and, Professor Ojukwu, whether it's true that they just ask us to cram or they prepare us. 8 minutes.
To my mind, I think that Professor Ojukwu is correct in some respects, and Mr. Onadeko SN is also correct in some respects. Now, if we are going to talk about...
Kenneth, they can't award you any degree again.
Now, if we are going to talk about the problems of legal education in Nigeria, the truth is that we must go back to the drawing board. And that is where I absolutely agree with Professor Onadeko, with Mr. Onadeko SN and Professor Ojukwu, that the system of legal education in our universities is, for lack of a better word, appalling. The truth is that what we have is that we assemble a lot of novices into a hall, and then we begin to overpopulate them with too much information they never get to practicalize, and all they are required to do at the end of the semester is to come and regurgitate. And if you successfully regurgitate, you graduate to the first class. And everybody thinks that you're going to become a good lawyer. After that, you go on to the law school. And the law school is not interested in regurgitation. The law school is interested in seeing how well you can apply all those principles of law you have spent 5 years learning and solve practical problems. That is the law school's approach. So when you find students coming into the law school, the first shock is that if you are a good crammer, you won't be able to cram at the law school. You need to apply the knowledge you've gotten so far. And so when they come to the law school, that shock makes them maybe not perform very well. And for those who manage to perform very well, people now think that they are also going into practice to become superstar lawyers. But that is not the case. Because what the law school does, in essence, is that it should prepare you, as Mr. Onadeko SAN has said. It gives you snippets of the requisite skills that you need to launch yourself into a successful life of practice. But what you do with that knowledge of the basic skills depends wholly and entirely on you, first, and secondly on the NBA. Because, as far as I'm concerned, legal, in actual fact, it should start after the law school. If I go to the law school, for instance, and I come out and I begin to practice, the truth is there's a limited number of subjects I can do in the university. The law school is obviously limited because they are more interested in practical courses that gives you the skills to excel in court or at the negotiation table to the extent that you do corporate law and property law. But then, if I come into practice and I have to interview clients, the best way to learn how to interview a client is by interviewing a client. The best way to learn how to do something, as they say, practice makes perfect. So after the law school, when you come into the life of practice, it is required that you begin to experience some of these things, and that knowledge you got from the law school keys into this experience, and then as the years go by, you metamorphose into that superstar lawyer that everybody wants you to be. Expecting the law school to produce superstar lawyers immediately upon call, I think it's too much. It's too much. And the truth is that the law school works with what it gets from the universities. We have a situation where in some states in Nigeria, the cutoff mark for JAMB is 170, 160 to study law. You have people who cannot speak English properly studying law. You have people who cannot construct a simple sentence or think for themselves studying law. And then at the end of the day, whether they pass or they do not pass, the universities find a way to push them to the law school. After committing the first offense, of course, of admitting beyond their quota, and then they push them to the law school has no choice but to accept all of them. Now, when the law school accepts all of these students, the first problem you have at the law school is that there is a very large margin in the student-to-teacher ratio. So no matter how well thought out the law school's curriculum is, no matter how well thought out the law school's teaching methodology is, the fact that one teacher has to manage 500 students will never produce any practical result. So, the first step, as far as I am concerned, is to begin to solve this problem from the early stages. Ensure that the universities do not admit beyond their quota. When you do that, the first thing you would have is that the learning in the university becomes more productive, becomes more interactive, because with fewer students in the class, the University of Jos I attended is supposed to have 170 students, law school quota. I can tell you that in my set we were over 400. Yes, we had to attend lectures, some of us standing outside the class. I know how many lectures I had to miss because when you come late, you stand outside the class. If you come early, you might not even get a space in the class. So you miss lectures, you come to the law school, and then all the students are sent to the law school. Right now at the Lagos campus, when I come on Thursdays for corporate law class, you have a class of 1,400 students. You're teaching, and you know that the only people interacting with you are the first 200 in the front. The others behind are not interacting with you at all. And when you attempt to go back and speak to them, they tell you that, one, the class is hot, two, they are not following, and there is no way to engage in meaningful interactions with these people because you cannot ask 1,400 students questions in the space of a 3-hour to 4-hour class. It's not possible. So the first thing we need to do is go back to the drawing board, ensure that universities do not admit beyond their quota, then ensure that the teaching methods in the university, and that is one point I would commend Professor Ernest Ojukwu saying, that the teaching methods in the university evolve from our traditional methods of teaching to clinical methods of teaching. Because as John Dewey would always say, the best way to learn is when we come together to work collaboratively and solve problems. So if we learn principles of law and at the university level, we begin to practicalize these principles through the law clinic, we would find that those principles would sit well with us, and some of those practical skills we need would begin to learn them because we get early exposure to potential clients, we get early exposure to solving cases, and then when we come to the law school, the approach is, we already understand that approach, and then we can key into it at the law school. And when we leave the law school and come into the life of practice, it is all the more easier for us. Now, leaving the law school and the universities aside, like I said, legal education is from cradle to grave for a lawyer. As long as you want to practice law, you owe yourself a duty, you owe the profession a duty to develop yourself, and the NBA owes itself and each one of us a duty to provide avenues for self-development. Now, what we have is that the NBA has established an ICLE, that's the Institute of Continuing Legal Education. Whether it's functional or not is a different question. In terms of enforcement and monitoring of CPD requirements, CPD satisfaction, that is also a different question. I read recently, it has been all over the news, that the AGC conference fees are unnecessarily high. And if you look at the rules of professional conduct, it says that attendance at bar conferences helps you get CLE, continuing legal education points. But you have, by putting the fees at that price, asked young lawyers not to come. So how on earth would young lawyers develop themselves if they are denied the opportunity of attending the AGC come August this year, where they are supposed to earn CLE points? Now, those are some of the practices in the NBA that make it impossible for young lawyers to develop themselves after the law school. And while we blame the NBA, we must also blame ourselves, because I believe that the day we decide to study law, we are deemed to have taken a solemn oath to continue to pursue self and professional development. And if we fail to do that, I don't think we deserve to be called learned. So while we would agree that yes, the system has a few faults, I don't think the problem is really with the law school. I think the problem is at the university level. If we get it right at the university levels, then the law school may just do very well in producing very close to superstar lawyers. Thank you.
Thank you. People like you. The audience likes you. The audience likes you because you're a man of the people. Why didn't you complain about SBL fees? But anyway, we'll talk about that. All right. So I love this session because he cheated though. He didn't say he's a law school lecturer. But at least from him we know that we have a major problem with what Professor Shipiton does. He says he admits too many students in university. Instead of 100, it takes 400. And he doesn't teach them well. So we should take his question from him. Anyway, but there's a suggestion on the table, and I think we should put it in the pocket. Change the teaching method in our law schools, reduce the number of students admitted to the law school. I think maybe question and answer, it will tell us whether the law school itself doesn't have too many students, or whether the law school should not be privatized or abolished. But someone else will talk about that. He spoke about clinical education, and I think it's time we hear now from those who use lawyers. And so I'll ask Dr. Kenneth Kachipu to give us a perspective as to the kind of lawyer she would like to employ, and either in-house, working with her, or the kind of lawyer she would like to engage as external counsel. Bearing in mind the kind of work she does, she's the only company that is listed on the London Stock Exchange as an equity investment. So I'm sure she has international perspectives. We should bring down to local experience as the kind of capacity building that we should see and how we should refine our architecture. No oil and gas, Dr. Kachiku.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for coming and listening. Usually when I attend these things, I look around at the panel and I often feel like an animal that's going into extinction, because usually we have those very distinguished people from the law firms and from academia, and quite often there will be the one from industry. And as it happens, that's happening again. But today, really, I urge you to bear with me, because I'm going to talk from a very subjective perspective. Like Prof said, we do use a lot of legal services. I have lawyers in my team. We use the services of lawyers in law firms. I also interact with lawyers in other corporate bodies, the NSC, SEC, other oil companies, all companies, contractors, their legal departments. So on a day-to-day level, I do interact with lawyers everywhere. Also, we have interns every year, about 4 to 6, so we get people from school. The only condition is that they have to be in school, and we'll have to get that confirmation from the school where they are. So I also get an insight into students. And that one is actually quite good, because sometimes the students are from abroad, and they're coming to do an internship, and then there are students who are from Nigerian universities, and you can tell the difference. And so when I was asked to speak, I looked at the architecture of legal education in Nigeria. So if you're looking at architecture, you're going to think about, what do I need this structure for? And so let's design something that's fit for purpose. So the question that came to my mind is the legal education in Nigeria fit for purpose for what we want our lawyers to be? So I was trying to look at the entire value chain of legal services in Nigeria. A tough call. But the first thing I decided to do was say, okay, so what do we want our lawyers to be? Where do I go to find out what we want our lawyers to be? So I decided to Google it. These days, that's where you get everything. And lo and behold, to my shock, I said, if anybody that wanted to be a lawyer in Nigeria wanted to find out how to become a lawyer, what standards a lawyer is held to, they'll come out really confused. Because you'll find different bodies. I ended up counting about 6 bodies that are involved in the regulation of lawyers in Nigeria. You have the Council of Legal Education, the NBA, the Professional Association, which I found is mainly for prosecuting erring lawyers and bringing them before the LPDC, the Appeal Committee, Supreme Court. Yes, they also do continuing education and other things like what we're here to do. But it's the impression you get is, oh yeah, they are the ones that regulate by disciplining the lawyers. The Bar Council that manages the NBA, the LPDC, the Appeal Committee, the Supreme Court. Now compare that to, let's say, the UK. And you come in and there's the Legal Services Board, under the Bar Standards Board, the SRA. Regulatory body is very clear. Go to their website. You can, on the one page, find out what you need to become a lawyer, what the standards are. If you're a member of the community that wants to report a lawyer or find a lawyer, it's that page. You go and find it there. I also looked at the US. You have the state bar associations, and it's very clear. And forgive me, when I went to the NBA website, it didn't actually come across as a regulatory body. And I'm like, okay, what's going on here? So I started struggling. So what standards? Who's managing the skills of lawyers? Where can I just go and find it clearly so that I can tell what the legal education is trying to do? And that also then informed the difficulty I do have on a day-to-day basis, trying to recruit lawyers, working with lawyers in law firms, and also some of the training we have in-house. Because I do find, like my colleague here said, and thank you very much too for explaining what we do in the universities and at the law school in Lagos and the different areas. I find that the training is too theoretical. It's all about giving information, handouts, you come to the exams, you regurgitate them. The law school, yes, there might be, okay, how do you apply? But again, it's a lot of information. And these days, we all know that education is just not about imparting knowledge. For education to be proper, it has to instigate action. Is our education doing that? Or are we just giving knowledge and then you come out, I'm a lawyer? Do you become a lawyer by studying just the law? In my experience, no. You don't do that. For education to be anything, whether it's primary school, secondary school, university, it has to instill your creativity. You have to learn how to ask questions. I remember my professor in my postgrad years, he didn't like anybody agreeing with him. He wanted you to question him. You would have that debate, even if at the end of the day you agreed with him, but he wanted to see your power of analysis. And so I find that a lot of our lawyers lack that. You tell them to write an opinion. Yes, they'll give you all the law says, section that, but come on, I want a solution to a problem. Especially when I'm in-house and I'm advising, I don't know, the board, the CEO, the COO, we have a problem we need to solve. I didn't tell you to write me a thesis or an academic paper. Just apply the knowledge and think widely. And while you're trying to give me that answer, if there are other problems you envisage that I'll meet in future, please let me know. So I find a lot of our lawyers lack that. And then I start asking, where's the problem from? So when you go down to the university level, the law school level, are we actually equipping our lawyers with the skills they need to question? The world has changed. We're in a world where you're no longer just dealing with family law, land law, constitutional law. The other day I heard Amazon is buying over the Whole Foods company for how many $1 billion? And there were some worries about competition. And the competition we knew before was focused on pricing. Now, on the internet, it's not just about people colluding to price. It's one big, giant company maybe pricing a bit lower and pricing other people out of the market. How are you going to solve it? We have Jumia, we have the consumers being protected. Who's advising on that? Entertainment law, name it. Our lawyers that were trained 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 15 years ago, equipped with the skills that they need to ask the right questions and find the right solutions to the new legal challenges that are coming. We talk about the millennia and all of them. But it's the same thing. Are we equipping them with those skills that they need? And what environment are we equipping them with these skills? I look at the accommodation, whether it's the classrooms, where they live. My niece, who's studying in the UK, came back to do law school and was in Abuja. I was appalled at the state of the accommodation. These are graduates. You know? So I see that resonates with you. I was appalled. These are graduates, our esteemed professional colleagues who are doing the vocational course. And the accommodation was, I don't know, words fail me. And then you go to other schools abroad, the people that these lawyers are going to compete with, in their libraries, they have access to LexisNexis, practical law, they sit in one place, they can do comparative law, find out what's happening in Australia, what's happening in London, what's happening anywhere else. And they can, their capacity is that wide. And the problem I have here is I tell somebody, can you please find the answer, do this, and they just do that one thing I tell them to do. You get somebody that studied in the US or in the UK, they will do 5 related to that one thing you told them to do. The analysis, you can see the difference. So the competency, the capacity, and it's down to the training. And so that brings me again to the fact that our training does seem to focus a lot on theory. So if I know what all the sections say, I know all the definitions, I know all the law cases, but at the end of the day, really, what's the skill that's required? Is it not to be able to find the answer where it is and present it, especially to lay people who are not lawyers? Not just to. Okay, so my last thing I would say is in relation to that practical aspect. I will ask the question, do we really believe that the way the law school as we have it today is at? Must it be the Council of Legal Education actually delivering the training in the law schools? Can private parties do it better and the Council of Legal Education has responsibility for the exams? Should we have a longer time of practical learning, a bit of partnership between the Council of Legal Education, law firms, corporate entities, where like a year or 2 years, the people go in and actually do real work, practical work, like the pupillage you have, or 2 years contracting in the UK? I think we should really think deeply about these things. I think our lawyers need more practical work to be able to, give fit for purpose legal service to their clients. Thank you.
Women in red generally take advantage of men. And I think because he's general counsel, well, I'll come to you tomorrow. I give you extra time, so you give me the brief. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Kachiku. You packed in a lot into that. We see you have a chemical mind. So she's challenged us. She said our training is theoretical, not solution-based. She needs solution-based lawyers. And earlier on, I'm glad she got into it because I talked of digital natives and the fact that legal services are being digitized. And she's saying that the lawyers we're preparing are not being prepared for that, which is at our doorstep. So I'm going to ask someone who looks like a digital native, although he's an old man, Olamide Oladosu, a director at Clifford Chance, to take up the challenges that Dr. Kachiku has, laid down. She's asked whether we shouldn't privatize the law school, and whether, so this training is done by private and the Council of Legal Education just certifies. So, Olamide, you're going to change from what you're going to say. You're going to talk about these provocative things as to whether, Ms. Onodeko should start a new, private school, and whether you would start a new school, and what we should do about advances in technology and legal practice vis-a-vis what we get. Thank you, Olamide Oladosu.
Thank you. I can see. Sorry, I never lectured in my life, so I'm not going to go there. I'm just going to sit here and we can have a conversation more like. Before I answer your question, Prof, I'm just going to spend the first 3 minutes and quickly try and get out all the stuff that I was hoping to say, and then I'll answer Prof's question. First thing, I think clearly, I mean, there's no gainsaying the fact that there are issues with legal education, like the bigger education picture in Nigeria and a lot of things in Nigeria. So there's no point going on that. But I noticed that we have very learned people here, but nobody to speak up for the universities. So I'll spend 30 seconds doing that. I think the classes are too large, we all know that. I think they admit too many people and all of that. But I must say that my experience is that there's some usefulness to the academic nature of what we do in the university. I spent, well, it was a 5-year program, but I spent 6 years plus. I did go to the oldest university in Nigeria, greatest UI. So we spent our first year doing stuff like psychology, philosophy, literature. That didn't really make a lot of sense to us then. But at least I did learn many things that have come very useful in the practice and the business of law. So while we sort of highlight the negatives, the shortcomings about our training program, I think there's some useful things because I had the chance to speak to people who qualify from different parts of the world. And they find especially that feature of our training process to be quite fascinating, and you know, it's not something they're used to, and there's some credit to be taken for that. In looking at the sort of architecture issue, I like to look at it 3 levels. There are the macro issues. The structure of our training, which has been spoken very eloquently about, so I'm not going to go into that. But I think the big things are, 1, like many parts of our country, there's need for openness and accountability. And I think that's the point that the last speaker was sort of hammering at. If you go to the UK or any other place, you can go to a website and get all the information you need and the standards and all of that. I think we need to sort of incorporate that more into the whole process here. There's a reason why, like Professor Juku said when he started, for many years, the MBA didn't play its part in that process. Where we are, countries have been there. I mean, even jurisdictions like the UK that we look up to. There have been in the last 30 years at least 3 or 4 committees, the Wolf Committee, that sat down at some point and said, what is wrong with the system and how do we fix it? It's a public conversation. Everybody contributes. People who want to be lawyers, people who have been lawyers, people who are in the process, and people who employ the services of lawyers contribute to that conversation. But I think at the root of it is something that is so fundamental that I think we need to move away from, and this is my personal view. Too many people still look at the legal profession as some sort of esoteric practice. In reality, it's a service. I won't go as far as saying like any other, but it's a service. There's a demand and there's a supply. You need to keep looking at what does the country need, what does the economy need, what do our clients need, and then tailor the process, both the training process and actually the organization of law firms and people who provide these services. And there are also sort of questions we need to ask ourselves. Professor Onodeko mentioned something about this classroom session they have now. I've always wondered, in expanding the law school, I mean, there are some locations of law school campuses that really doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And why? Because you're doing practical training. You need practitioners to come in and be part of that process. The thinking to me is, I'll locate campuses in places where I can easily access those people, get the best people in business to come in. And so there's a reason why certain industries are located in certain places. It's because they find either the raw materials or the people or the processes close to that place. So if you go and cite a law school campus in a place where, yeah, there might be good lawyers there, but it's simply at a different level to what you want to expose your students to, you're already doing some disservice to the students in that campus. And that's the reality. I mean, I know we have all these socio-political considerations to make, but when it comes to things that are so specific such as this, I think those must take sort of back seat. It must be, how do we produce the best lawyers? And it's those sort of things. So those are the sort of macro issues, and I'm happy that the current MBA did set up a committee with Prof. Chairing that committee to look at this training process. So I'm glad that the MBA is beginning to take a sort of more focused look at that. At the sort of micro level is where I'll put the law firms, where most lawyers go into. And the truth, if we're going to be honest with ourselves, is that we simply haven't done enough. So we know the deficiencies in the people that come out of the law school. And I know a few firms have started sort of formalizing processes to sort of retrain and better prepare the people they take in. But I think as an industry, it would be nice to have some clarity with the legislation and all of that. But even in the absence of that, it's our market, it's where we thrive. There's nothing wrong with law firms coming together and saying, oh, when you're called to the bar, we'll have some outline of what you need to go through to best prepare you for this profession. You don't need, if government is not passing the necessary legislation as an industry, I don't see that there's anything stopping us from getting together and defining. We've listened to the consumers of the services that we provide, and this is what they want. We've looked at our history internally, and this is what we think we need for people when they come in, and have sort of industry standards. And someday, maybe law will catch up with reality. So that's my own sort of little challenge. And just 1 minute on the sort of individual level. No matter how good the process is, there'll be people who will strive to be the best and will continue to do that. And even with this litany of inadequacies, people produced out of this very system go elsewhere and excel. It's a fact. So, the training process, we've identified inadequacies, but I think the environment that we create afterwards is determined to a large extent by the law firms and the individuals. And if we sort of try and restructure in a way that will encourage people to seek for excellence, I think that's the root, and it goes back to accountability and openness. If we put excellence, effort on a pedestal, and people see that that's what to look up to, I think you'll get better quality. People in law school will spend more time on the right things, and you get better products. And then to address a Prof's specific question to me, I think it's obvious why there has to be a central examination process. But I don't see anything wrong with having other people run the process of preparing for that exam. So you could either go to the Nigerian law school, which may or may not continue to be owned by the government, but you could give other people who want to invest in that the opportunity to do so. And at the end of the day, they write the same exam. It's sort of similar to what we're having in universities already. So that's my 2 cents on the subject.
Thank you very much, Olamide. Olamide is a very wise man and deliberately left dealing with the issue I wanted him to deal with in the 7th minute and 49 seconds. And that's because, he's now director of Clifford Chand, so he's looking for work and doesn't want to offend anybody. Because normally he likes to offend people, and I don't know why he refused to do so today. But I think Olamide has managed to squeeze this back to us legal practitioners and turn the focus on us as the role that we play in capacity building. And I think it's a good point on which I'll ask Nicole, who is Director of Learning and Development at ILFA, to take this up. They help law firms all over Africa in developing capacity. So Nicole, thank you.
Good afternoon. Unlike him, I also don't have public speaking experience, but I'm dying to stand in front of this podium. So Here I go. Thank you so much for the introduction. Like you said, my name is Nicole Kears, and I am the Director of Learning and Development at ILFA. ILFA's main mission is to build capacity in legal services in Africa. And the way that it does that is through two main complementary programs. The first is the secondment program, which probably a lot of you have heard of. And the second one is through our online CLE program called Angaza Africa Law Training. Now, I had come with about an hour's worth of presentation material, which I now know I have 8 minutes to do it in. So I will try to talk briefly. I will speak more, if I have time, I'll speak a little bit about those two specific programs. But what I want to focus on is the general concept of continuing legal education, or CPD, or continuing professional development, and international secondment programs. Continuing legal education allows us to have a more holistic approach to the practice of law, and it also allows us to respond more proactively to the changing laws and the changing of legal practice as we know it of today. So I think I don't know how I am on time. We're waiting for the tap. I think I have enough time to talk a little bit about international secondments. So ILFA is kind of known more primarily for their international secondment program. Our program brings over 20 lawyers every year to law firms in London, Paris, and Dubai, and they receive 2 weeks of course training in Oxford and Cambridge, and then they're placed in law firms where they continue to receive training, technical skills, and are put on really high-level transactions that helps them develop as lawyers. There's actually also an intra-Africa secondment program offered by ILFA. Last year in 2016, it was sponsored by some Nigerian law firms. But generally about secondments, they are very relevant in terms of obviously networking, but also sort of seeing a different context for the practice of law, and they really also allow lawyers to develop more fully and understand not just a different practice, but sort of how different firms deal with the same types of law that they might or might not be practicing. So I think that is all I'm going to say on international secondments. I actually will have an exhibition booth, so if you want to see our online CLE program, I'm happy to show that to people after the panel. But just basically to conclude, I wanted to say, give a little bit about why I think this is in particular important in the context of Nigeria. I think that Nigeria offers a very special case, as I think from my perspective the quality of legal education and the practice of law is actually quite high. However, I also think that we talked earlier about excellence. I think that there's a difference between being a good lawyer and being an excellent lawyer. And in my opinion, in programs such as CLE and secondment programs really allow lawyers to take their legal knowledge and their skills and their practice to the next level. So transforming them from good lawyers into excellent lawyers. So I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm sorry I had to cut 1 hour into 9 minutes. Yeah, I gave you more time. Yeah, without complaining. Unlike the woman in red, but that's fine. So I think in summary, we've tried as much as we can to spend just 1 hour in giving you various views on how we can reform capacity building in the profession, from reducing the number of students admitted to the law school to the method of teaching in the universities. Although Olamide believes that we should spend more time in university studying philosophy and religion. Probably because he spent 6 years in studying law. Did you fail twice? I'm just kidding. But seriously, so we know now that the law school does its best to produce lawyers, equipping them to begin to practice, but we know that they should do more to produce lawyers that can provide practical solutions to people that require, as Olamide says, services, and that we should know as lawyers that we should begin to train people to know that they're not in a rarefied profession, but that they're part of a market, although a special market it is. And we know that we've got to be more transparent and more accountable to society. I'm told there are a few people that would like to ask questions of the panel. I believe Mr. Anjori and Madam Irene would organize for how we take questions. So, hands up. Right, the gentleman with the cap. As long as your question is 1 minute only. Yes, you sir. 1 minute. Yes, you. The gentleman with the cap in brown. Dr. Gwanra, 1 minute only, because his questions are usually long. 1 minute.
Well, thank you so much, sir. My name is Aminu Gamawa. I teach in the university, so I think we talk a lot, but I will try to be very brief. I think I want to clear the misperception that we have too many lawyers or we are producing too many lawyers. Conservative estimates, Nigeria has a population of over 150 million, and we don't have more than 150,000 lawyers. So we need more lawyers. What we need, in addition to that, is more facilities at the universities, more opportunities, more teachers, more qualified lecturers at the law school. I think you cannot expect the law school and the universities to give you what they don't have. You cannot put 400 students in one class and expect the teacher to teach them well. It can't happen. So we have to invest a lot in legal education. That is the best way to deal with the problem. So my question to the panel is, how do we use technology to bridge this particular skill gap that we are talking about? Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Kwanama, you breached. You were supposed to ask a question, not make a statement. So I may not... yeah, any lady in the house? Yes, the lady in the house. The lady in red. I like women in red. Yes, the woman in red.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Yimika Deshola, and my question is simple, but I'm not sure who I can direct it to. I think there's a representative of the NB on the panel. But my question is, we've had this discussion, we've had these discussions many times, but who is responsible for implementing the solutions that we come up with? Because what we find is year on year on year, we're having the very same discussion, arriving at the very same solution, but nothing is changing. So who can we hold responsible for the fact that things are remaining the same?
Thank you, Yimika. Thank you. Yes, Professor, I will... Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Professor. Professor, 1 minute to... Although it be son, 1 minute to...
Thank you, Chairman. Fabian Ajogu is my name. First question is, how do we address that big difference between knowing the practice of the law and the business of the law? They're not the same thing, and they account for what makes a successful lawyer from one who just knows the law. And the second question, still within... I think I'm off. Second question is, how do we address the issue of cost of education? Because sometimes you get only what you pay for. Thank you.
Thank you. I will ask Kenneth Oko to kindly respond to the first question as to technology and the law, and I'll ask Mr. Olarusu to answer the question on practice and business of law. And I'm sure, Mr. Onodeko will be glad to tell us on why everything we tell him is not being implemented. All right, so, yes.
Okay, so thank you.
Sorry, 1 second. Yimika asked why solutions are not being implemented, or how will what we decide today come to light. And I'm sure, Professor Joku, I think he's a politician, will talk about costs of education.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Gamawa, for the question. How do we use technology to bridge the gap in legal education? I have an answer to that. In May, I started taking a course online, and on that platform, there are participants from all over the world. We are up to 1,000. We have virtual classes with the lecturers. Everybody in your house with your internet connection, the lecturers are live. Everyone is communicating in real time, answering questions, taking questions from the lecturers, taking down notes, and it's very, very interactive because they use the Socratic method of teaching. And this is something that the Americans have developed. This is something they are using, and it is working. I have seen it work. Now, we think that the best use of the internet we can have is to record lectures and then play them to students. No, I'm talking about lecturers teaching in real time with participants from all over the world. Over 1,000 of us, about 3 lecturers, and each person is active, each person is participating through polls online and all that. And this is something that if we decide to, if the NBA, I know that I've seen the NBA president travel around trying to get ideas from what obtains in other jurisdictions. I believe that these systems were designed by experts. If we engage these experts and speak to them, a similar structure can be developed for us here in Nigeria. The only problems we would have, of course, as I do have when participating on that platform, would be our epileptic power supply and poor internet connectivity. Okay. But besides that, it's a good experience and we can use that.
Good. All right. Yes, Mr. Aladus. You raised the point, so give us the answer. Practice and business of law.
I guess there's no real one sort of answer to it. Like any other skill set, it's something that I guess a very few people, it comes to them naturally, but for most of us, we have to learn it. And it's not one of those things that can be taught in law school either. So it's from the practice. But I think the biggest sort of ladder across the gap is something that was discussed extensively during the first session this morning, which is skill. It's simply that. The more appropriate the size of the law firm, the greater the investment you can make in certain things that you need, whether it's training, whether it's acquiring skills, such as the business angle of the profession. And again, it's not something that the guys who practiced 40 years ago, what worked then is what will work now. The legal services market is even different from 15 years ago. So it's an ongoing sort of skill acquisition, continuing legal education bit, which of course will reside at the very top of the firm. But I don't think there are any shortcuts. It's understanding that there are skill sets that must be acquired. So either deliberately going out or building the skill that will allow the firms to make the sort of investments required to acquire the skill.
Thank you, Olamide. I'll just add to that. Prince Ajibola has been winking. He has a conference August 20 to 24 where this subject will be taken on more seriously, the annual general conference of the bar. Ms. Oneda Kosa. Abi Prince Ajibola? Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Well, to answer Olaimika's question on why decisions reached at fora like this are never implemented. In truth, I think it's one of the endemic challenges we have in this country of not getting decisions down the line to those who need them for implementation. Had I not been here today at this session, I certainly would not have been part of what is being discussed. And whatever the rapporteurs put together as our conclusions may never get to me. So, simply put, it's just a matter of getting things down to the right places. We at the Nigerian Law School are always excited and willing to key into good ideas within our resources which can improve our training methods. And let me assure you that we will certainly welcome good ideas from every source. Thank you.
Prof.
Okay. Of course, there's a connection between cost and outcome. But the problem is actually not cost. The problem is, first, to be sincere to accept that we are not doing it right. And what do we need to do it right? If we set those goals, we begin to look for the money. I'll give you an example. But it is not, that example does not illustrate my general belief about our falling standard. The falling standard of legal education should be focused on the 5 years LLB. The law school is neither here nor there. Whenever we talk about legal education, people talk about law school. That is not where the problem is. The problem is maybe compounded there, but if we solve the problem at the LLB level, we will solve the problem at the law school level. But I go back to cost. The current program of the law school was designed in 2006, 2008. And the aim of this program is to have small class lessons. There's no way you can train anybody for skills in a stadium. It's impossible. And that's exactly what we're doing. 10 years after, we have continued to assemble the students in a stadium. I'll give you an example. Week 9 of drafting of charges. The lesson is draft the charge in various courts in Nigeria. That's the outcome. The actual delivery of that lesson is a 2 hours lesson done in Abuja campus, 1,700 students watching you. In Enugu, 1,000 students. In Lagos, 1,004. In Yenagoa, 400. In Kano, 800. In Yola, 300 watching you. And the lesson is done in 2 hours for the whole 5-6 years program. Nobody does charges in the 5-year program. Nobody. And then at the law school, the lesson on charges is as follows. Students in the class, tutor gives an overview of 20 minutes of charges. Overview. Then students are grouped to make sample presentations on charges drafted for filing before the magistrate court. Nowhere were they told to do pre-class drafting here. Then students are grouped to make sample presentation on charges drafted for filing 40 minutes. So the whole lesson of charges is 40 minutes. Meanwhile, between 2006 and 2012, the law school invested in constructing classrooms to move the stadium lesson to small class lessons. They have collapsed them back to stadium. It is impossible.
Thank you very much. Yes,
no, just a second, sir. Just a second.
No.
There's something on implementation. Something, please, Chairman, on implementation.
I need more questions.
Just 1 second.
On 2 minutes to go.
Yes, sir. On implementation, the characters that are our problems are: 1, the National University Commission; 2, the law teachers themselves. They constitute 90% of the problem. The law teachers. 3, the Council of Legal Education / Nigerian Law School. 4, the lawyers themselves. Who can coordinate these things? Only the Nigerian Bar Association. We have continued to disempower our law graduates. The economy is a problem, but the main reason why we are having unemployment for our young lawyers is because we are mistraining them.
Thank you, Professor Ojukwu. Yes. How many more minutes, Mrs.? I'm told there's just one more question because we have only 2 more minutes. You're just coming, I can't ask you. Any lady in the house? She's too senior to ask. Oh, another lady in red. The lady in red.
It's clearly a day for ladies in red. My question really, coming from the perspective of someone who's come to Nigeria and requalified, is what is the role of law firms in training? I speak as someone who started a training contract and my first 2 weeks were covered by induction. And then the time I spent in my department had pretty much training every week. And it sounds like we're talking about CLE is something that happens outside of our firms. Nicole has alluded to training that happened while she was in her firm and being trained by the partners. But there's a sense that we're talking about legal education as something that we farm out to the institutes of education and not something that actually happens within the law firms.
Thank you. Mrs. Usoro? Half a minute, Mrs. Usoro. Half a minute.
Actually, my question could only be asked by those who are senior, who have children in the university age. So the question is, for the proponents of a solution being reduce the number of entrants in universities, you reduce the number of entrants into law school, could you please also give us the solution to the social problems that will be caused by the spillover of the aspiring law students and the aspiring students to the law school, if that recommendation is taken? Thank you.
Thank you. There's nobody, people behind, can't you hear us? Yes, the gentleman that has just put up his hand. Yes, sir. The gentleman, yes.
My name is Mofi Followa. My question, I think, is directed to the law school. Basically, while your time is spent at law school, there's an emphasis on being fit and proper, to the extent of making it a terrifying thing for you, because you don't want to get into any problems that make you not fit and proper, and as such, not fit to be called to the bar. So my question is, does the establishment not think that this turns prospective lawyers into cowering people before getting into the profession? Because I think it limits, if you can't ask questions, if you can't argue really with your lecturer or whoever, then surely by the time you're coming out, how are you prepared
Thank you very much.
Before a judge?
Thank you. Mr. Osenadege, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, do you have any questions for us? No. Just one more question. You came late, oh. You came late. That's why you are standing. Okay, the gentleman there. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Oyilo Oyewo, Faculty of Law, University of Lagos.
Prof, they say you should sit down. They say you should sit down. Say you should sit down. No?
My question is to ask whether we're really serious about what we're discussing. Because if we are serious about that, the next question I want to ask us, what have we done about it? How many of us, since we graduated, ever went back to our school to tell them this is what you are doing wrong? And Mr. Chairman, there are senior lawyers here. What interest are they showing in legal education? They just want institutional and wait to harvest the best that comes from the institution.
Thank you. Prof,
what is the investment?
Prof.
What is the investment of the leadership of the bar in the university?
All right, Prof. Thank you
very much.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Ayoride and Mrs. Robinson Ayonwale, you have to give 3 minutes to answer his question. So we're ready to go, but that question has to be answered. So Mrs. Rabana, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, and you wanted to answer? The lawyers that are making a lot of money would have to answer. The former president of the bar would have to answer, and Prince Ajibola. So please, can you give the microphones to President of, where's the microphone? Please give it to the President of the bar. Former President of the bar, and then the man with the beard, Prince Ajibola, and then Mrs. Wabana would let us know what women are doing about it.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It looks like a conspiracy of the professors. The interesting part of what Professor Oyo, our dean, has said is that nothing is being done by a lot of us. But some of us have tried the little that we can do. It is obviously not enough, and we have to do more. And the message we should take out from here today is, if there's still this huge gap in training of our lawyers, it shows that whatever steps we have taken so far are insufficient as a problem. And we all need to recommit ourselves to doing more. If we don't tell ourselves the truth of the situation, then we continue to delude ourselves, and this problem will continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Prince Ajibola, quickly.
Well, Prof, I don't want to hold brief for you, because the true person who perhaps should focus on a question like this is eminent professors, senior advocates of Nigeria like yourself, who have very large law firms, are beneficiaries of the very large briefs, and...
Ajibola, it's okay. Mrs. Wabana. Mrs. Wabana, thank you. I love Mrs. Wabana. She's going to be kind to me. I'm sorry I made a mistake about Prince Ajibola.
Prof, I think it's a good opportunity to say that I have been consistent, actually, in the content of the curriculum, even in the law school, and I think I've discussed that severally. In other words, the approach to exposing young lawyers to the various aspects, the emerging causes that they will come out and meet, I've always said, is something that should be touched on and something that should be encouraged. But the question as to whether or not lawyers are, senior lawyers are sufficiently interested, I think a whole lot are. And that is why we relate to the law school. That is why we offer to speak. That is why we encourage mentorship, because one of the reasons I think why the young lawyers feel detached is because we don't have structured mentorship. And I think that the law school, and especially, in fact, the MBA particularly, should look more into that opportunity that can be afforded young lawyers when you have a kind of structured mentorship program, not lip service. So indeed, I appreciate the fact that there's so much to be done. I know that I shouted when I went to the law school to see the accommodation, and that also was raised. I believe that we should look more, not only in the subject matter, but also the psychology of these students. You put them in an environment that is not fit, and you expect them to study and come out with the confidence that they should come out with, then we are not being fair. So indeed, I believe the senior lawyers are concerned. The senior lawyers, I do not think that for these institutions look outside, think outside the box to implement some of the practical said. So it is not just a talk show. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I thought you would clap better for her, much more than from Prince Ajibola. Thank you. I think on account of time, I would, on behalf of the panel, thank you all very much. You've been a fantastic audience, and you've made this session very educative. I have no doubt that coming out of here, the challenge thrown to the law firms will be taken seriously, Professor Ewo. And someone else earlier on had asked the question about law firms participating. The law school actually sends a list of people to law firms without asking whether they have time or capacity. But most law firms take all these students. But I think, as Mr. Rabana said, things should be more formal. I'm sure the MBA is starting a mentorship program that will ensure that law firms play a greater role in the training of lawyers. In terms of social displacement, Mrs. Osoro, the politicians amongst us will deal with that. And on whether, in bringing up fit and proper persons, we should ensure, as Dr. Kachiku mentioned in her presentation, that lawyers are not cowed, that the law school should respect students, because I know of many students that have or many people that have come out of law school that say, lecturers like Mr. Okwo are very disparaging of them, they're very rude to them, and I know mature students who come through the law school and are treated like kids. So, point to take away is that the law school should know that these are postgraduates and should be treated much more fairly. Well, on behalf of the panel, once again, thank you very much. Have a good lunch.